Hello, we are live. We're here. We're here. It's happening.
Is all we waited for.
The wait is over. The wait is over. Yeah, I'm so excited. I am so excited for today. It has been much anticipated because every time we've talked about healthy community and whether that's identifying, engaging, and building it like more and more keeps coming up. What about you, ladies?
Yes, I feel like we started talking about this last year, Nanette, and I feel like we have this Marco Polo relationship where we would just bounce ideas back and forth, and I feel like this whole thing has just been like a flower blooming.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I would completely agree with that. And okay, so we've got some people coming on. Hello. Hello, hello. Go ahead and comment. Let us know who's here, where you're from, and all of that stuff. We are going to jump into this conversation about healthy community. And I'm here with my good friends, Laurie Leslie and April Driskell. They are also team members in our Intuitive Daughters of God team. And I'm not going to give them a super formal intro because I'll do that when we actually connect and do our additional trainings. Today is more of a panel style conversation about healthy community and these three different aspects of healthy community that we are focusing on today, which is identifying healthy community, engaging in healthy ways in community, and building healthy community. So I'm really excited to do that. I will. Let's see. Let me do a super brief intro of both of you ladies. So yeah, so April is a Kingdom Business Advisor in the Armory, which is our membership, our leadership development space here at IDG. And Lori is our lead trainer, and she has kind of a variety of roles in IDG and probably some more coming up soon.
Ooh, I like that anticipation.
Well, little mini teaser there. So Val, hi Val, I see you. Thank you for tagging people. That is awesome. Appreciated. So hello, those of you who are coming in. Say hi. Let me know who's here, where you're from, and all that jazz. Okay, so I will also say that Lori and April are two of my closest friends and allies. I actually feel like that that represents a little bit of our relationship, like your friends and allies.
Yeah.
As advocates of highly intuitive people, intuitive daughters of God. This is a co-laboring space. And I'm so blessed to have the two of you joining me in that.
Thank you. Thank you for having us today.
Yes.
We feel the same way about you.
Thank you. We could just sit here and talk about how much we adore one another for a while. And healthy sisterhood is a part of healthy community for sure, especially when we've got women in community together, right?
Yes.
And so there's that aspect also. But for everybody, here's what we have coming up. Okay, so today we're going to have a conversation, and once a month for the next 3 months, we are going to have a training. We're going to have a training on identifying healthy community, and that is going to be Lori and I are going to connect on that, and then April and I are going to connect on engaging in healthy ways in community in another training. And I am going to have a special guest join me to talk about building healthy community. And so I'm really excited that that's coming up. So we are at the point, I was just thinking this recently, there is no arrival point. We're all in process, right?
So good.
Healthy community. And it's like, I always think of it like a garden. It's a garden. It's an ecosystem. It's more than even an atmosphere. When you have a community, and I'm not just talking about a group because groups come and go, right? But a community where maybe the members of that community come and go and things ebb and flow.
Mhm.
But the community itself is a garden, and that garden needs certain things to keep it healthy and thriving and growing. And when you're in the early stages, it may not even look like a garden. It may not even fully look healthy, right? It may just look a little awkward. But that's just part of the process. And so now we're at a point in our growth process in Intuitive Daughters of God as individual people in the armory. And we're able to have not only a conversation about healthy community, but actually enter into a training space
Mhm.
with a lot of what we've learned. So I've learned by making a lot of mistakes, and either of you two.
Yes, that's part of my intro. Don't steal it.
Okay, yes, you're right. I'm just taking that one from you like I don't own it.
We all own it.
Yes. So I am going to have April and Lori, I'm going to have each of you give a little bit of your background, tell which of these aspects that you are emphasizing personally, where between that identify, engage, and build. And then what about your background,
Mhm.
quote unquote, qualifies you to talk about this conversation? Tell us all about your mistakes that make you qualified.
Yes, I think that's the key. I love what you said earlier about like setting the stage for this to be that we're all in process. Like that to me is like a nice deep breath because what we're talking about in regards to community for an intuitive daughter of God, it is so important that she would give herself permission to just be in process. So for me, my area of expertise will be engaging. And as I was thinking about it, I'm like, you know what? That's a superpower of mine that I need to claim and really talk about. As I was thinking about, well, why is it that I'm in this one? And I'm like, because not only do I value it, but the Lord, I mean, within me, I'm born to engage with people everywhere that I go. So thinking about how did I end up with this topic? I started thinking about we're all in process, did that rear view mirror look, and I'm thinking to myself, look at all the highs and lows of my life, all the different types of communities I've been in, from the ones we don't choose, our family, small groups at church, leading large groups, working with people, just all the different areas and the highs and lows. And in that rear view mirror, I did see my own garden. I can see the places back there where the highs and lows, where I could like pick flowers that have grown in that garden of my life. And so I'm excited to be able to just share, what does it look like to engage? How can I do that safely? How can I trust my intuition and other people? So that is, and I'm April Driskell, and my superpower is engagement.
Own it. I love it. Yes,
It's
queen.
my confessional.
My confessional. Oh my gosh, awesome. What about you, Lori?
So mine is identifying healthy community, and it makes perfect sense because my entire experience of identifying healthy community was by being in multiple toxic environments, from churches to online spaces. And really, that started with my foundation, like April said, which was my first community, which was my family.
Mhm.
So there was a lot of dysfunction there. And that actually, it's hard to identify healthy community when you have that foundation. So for me, um, you know, it especially made it hard with leadership as well. And then later in life, I went through years of chronic illness, which caused me to self isolate. But it was through that disconnection that I actually realized that God wanted to build healthy community within me. And
Mhm.
that's what I was missing, before. And so as that happened, it was like building that community with Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. and then with myself, and then coming out of that as a certified life coach and mentor,
Mhm.
and helping walk women out of toxic relationships, and also identifying unhealthy spaces as well. So, and then helping them reconnect with their heart
Mm.
and trusting themselves again after walking through something so toxic. So that is my superpower.
I love
And
that.
that is huge. Yes, that's huge. And we do talk about learning to trust ourselves or learning to trust ourselves again. And that's huge. That is absolutely your superpower. I love it. Love all the superpowers. Yeah,
I feel a theme coming on.
right, right. Well, and one of my superpowers has become co-creating with others, with the full trinity, with angels, with with the entity that I have been given stewardship over,
Yep.
to build healthy community and to continue enriching that soil
Mm.
and to continue tending things and really to become a better and better cultivator of that space. And
Yeah.
so that's why I'm really happy to after seeing the fruit, like you were talking in April about being able to like see the fruit of that, see those blooms, see like, oh my gosh, look what God did and look what that partnership produced
Mhm.
and that intentionality. Because I believe we've all been in this process our entire lives, like you've mentioned before, like that first community of family is where we get introduced into that dynamic. Any dynamic of community starts with our first one, our family. And then we have this whole lifelong journey. But then it's been in recent years that I know I have really gotten very intentional. And I believe that's probably true of both of you as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Awesome. Well, we're going to jump into the first area of healthy community, which is identifying healthy community. So, Lori, will you jump us off that? That's not a thing.
Let's lead us out. Lead us out.
Thank you.
Lori, why don't you lead us out in that?
It's like we're all linking arms on the side of a cliff, and we're like, "Who's got the parachute?" No.
Oh my goodness. Sure, I love that idea. Let's do it. So let's jump off. I guess I would start with really identifying starts with learning to trust your inner guidance system, your intuition, and knowing the difference between a lot of times we're told to not trust our feelings because feelings come and go, but understanding that feelings are meant to pass through. But
Mhm.
if you have that feeling that doesn't leave, that is your gut speaking to you and showing you something, and learning to really trust that when getting into a new community is going to help guide and lead you, that the Holy Spirit speaks to us through that inner guidance system. And so we talked about this before, but being able to ask questions in that space, is it okay to ask the leaders what they're doing and why they're doing it? Do they
Mhm.
welcome that? Or is there a defensiveness that they have and they don't want to answer your questions, or they can answer it with clarity?
Mhm.
That's the first sign or signal to look for, I believe, when maybe identifying unhealthy traits in a community. And
Yeah.
I know we've talked about that before, Nanette.
Yeah, we have. And one of the things that I love this as a really simple, practical gauge. And yet we have to start with what's my heart as I gauge, right? So as we're entering in, I wanna really suggest um, coming to a place where we can enter into spaces with curiosity.
Mm.
And then the question is that curiosity welcome?
Yeah.
Because a healthy space invites and supports childlike curiosity,
Mm.
right?
Hmm.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think if we can enter in like a child, right? Just like some of that innocence and that curiosity, like in what you're saying, that will also help when you start asking those questions that you mentioned, Lori, of the leadership, right? Because then whatever the answer is, I can stay stable because I'm able to manage my feelings, right? So even when I'm checking in on where they are, it doesn't mean I'm not supposed to be there. It just means I now have a new awareness. And that's what happens when I'm trying to look at the health of the community.
Right. Yep.
Absolutely. And also, just thinking about how I think as deep feelers, we are so hungry for connection that
Mhm.
when we finally find that alignment or we feel that connection with people, we are desperate to keep it. So when those signals come, we tend to ignore them.
Yeah.
So we have to be willing to also ask ourselves the right questions as we walk through that process and be willing to say, okay, I'm aligned with these people. This is a community. But if things start to go wrong or you sense something that's not quite right, being willing to ask yourself that question and being able to let that go when
Mhm.
the time comes and trust that you will find the right community and you will find that alignment.
Yeah. That's so good. That's so good. And I'm wondering if there's even a starting point of recognizing, am I desperate to be recognized?
Mhm.
Am
Yeah.
I desperate to fit in somewhere? Right?
Mhm.
Because as intuitive daughters of God, we often are either overlooked, or what will happen is if somebody does recognize our gifts, then we can get like sucked in super fast into a place that we may or may not actually want to be, that may or may not actually be the healthiest place for us, or the place where, God wants us. But because we have gone so long having this vacuum of belonging,
Mhm.
when we have a hint of that belonging, sometimes we're like, oh my gosh. And what I hear you saying is that learning how to kind of posturing yourself where you're like, and you too, April, like posturing yourself where you enter into a space, you allow yourself to gauge, to
Mhm.
evaluate yourself, to evaluate the group itself, how the leaders are responding,
Mhm.
how they're how the engagement like what the engagement of the members are like, and that sort of thing, but allowing yourself um to also exit if it's the time and place to exit, right?
Mhm.
One thought that comes to my mind also is when we're looking at community, depending on the structure of groups and communities should have railings, rules, right, to keep things in order, and how they deal with conflict. When you watch conflict happening,
Mm.
that's also another place to identify healthy community, because if you,
Mhm.
you see things that are difficult happening within the group, no one is, and it doesn't change because it's not being addressed on the sidelines, right? It's not your job to lead other people's communities. But if these behaviors continue, sometimes that's that opportunity for you to, again, not always with an exodus mentality, but to look and go, okay, I see that. And now, because I'm the intuitive one, and I can see it, thank you, Lord, now I pray into it. So I become a power shifter in the health of the community, because the Lord has given me eyes to see things that maybe other people don't.
Mm. That's so good, and that really it comes from that building that trust with yourself and realizing that it's a gift to be
That's
able
good.
to feel that, and it's not something to be ignored. It's to be celebrated, it's actually a gift
Yes, that's
because
so good.
we spend a lot of time as intuitives feeling like, "What's wrong with me?" Right?
Mm,
There's nothing wrong with you. You're just wired differently,
Yeah.
mm,
and it's really a wonderful thing when you learn how to let that flow.
that's
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. That's so good. And I'm wondering, Lori, what your what your thoughts and feelings are, maybe what your perspective is on what about the voices of the members in the group, right? Because one of the things we talk about in the Armory is having equal voices
Mhm.
and amplifying the voices of the members in our space. So, what are some observations that you have about identifying healthy community, maybe through the lens of the voice of how the voice of the members are approached?
Yeah, being celebrated, not sounding, the individual voices being released and it's sounding different than the group leader and having different accomplishments outside of the group, is that celebrated within that space? Because if it's not, it can become almost a cult like environment.
Mhm.
We need to celebrate. They're not always going to be within our group. And so, is that voice being released? Is it welcome there? I think that's so important in healthy community. And a lot of times, you can feel like there will be a cycle that continues from the leaders. And, a lot of times you'll use the same language, but is there a cycle that just repeats over and over again with no fresh revelation, no fresh word? That's something to also keep in mind when listening to other voices within the group.
Mhm.
Yeah. Wow, that's a really good point because Holy Spirit is always doing both an ancient thing and a fresh thing, right? So we'll be drawn back to this ancient or original or even sometimes basic, simple revelation, right? The idea of the simple gospel. But there is a fresh wind that blows, a fresh perspective of what's God doing now,
Mm.
and when things do get in some kind of a loop or stale and stagnant, that I feel like as feelers, we feel that. But
Mhm.
at the same time, there can also be, depending on what our personal health is, sometimes we can also get sucked into that loop, right?
Mm.
So, I'm trying to think of an example. I would love to hear an example. Would you? I mean, I know. Okay, here's since you brought it up. I'm not saying to name names or tell somebody else's story, but something that you have observed, or yeah, something you've observed that has to do with the kind of pattern of a loop that doesn't allow for that refreshment.
That is a really tough question.
I know, I just put you on the spot.
No, it's okay. I wanna think of how to answer this in the best way.
Dig into the files.
Yeah,
Yes,
the
yes.
recesses.
I've seen it in so many different spaces and churches where it's almost like a loop, like you said, like a track, and we have talked about this before, but an actual example of, a revelation that maybe they got from God, and then it becomes like everything, like they almost build a theology around that revelation.
Mhm.
And then it becomes gospel,
Yeah.
and you have to conform to this specific thing that God showed them.
Mhm.
That's really the best example that I can come up with.
So I watched a video of somebody who had a near death experience. And my sister shared it with me. And the near death experience was super fascinating. But the thing that had me getting that, like, ooh, something's off feeling was that he actually built this entire message and theology around it. And this guy's like in his 90s now. And I think this near death experience happened when he was in his 40s. So, like, 50 years of this was my experience. God told me this. He had me take this message and let people know like what they needed to hear in this generation. But that's exactly what he's still talking about 50 years later.
Mhm.
And I thought, oh my gosh, I feel like what And I bless this man. I love that he's telling his story, and his experience was amazing. It
Mhm.
was that the entirety of the rest of his life was built around, like, 1 or 2 steps that God gave him right around when this happened, and then that was it. That was his everything forever. And
Wow.
there are times that God, yeah, like there are times we hold strong to something even past when maybe we were like, okay, God, I need a fresh perspective on this if this is what I'm still supposed to be doing, right? I had that when I ran the Freedom Fighter Manifesto workshop. I was like, I've run this twice already. Is this still what we're doing? Like, are we really doing this again? And he gave me such an upgrade and
Yeah.
really refreshed my entire perspective and reignited my passion, um,
Mm.
because of that. But I was ready to bail on it, right? So there are times that we go, but it's not the same thing every time, you know?
Yeah.
Um, anyway, so and that has to do with voices too, right? I know I asked you that about what does it sound like in that space? Are there multiple voices who are giving input? Do they sound different from one another? Is there a freshness and a fresh perspective that's being welcome? And all of that is a part of healthy community, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. That's good.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I just love last night when we had our Selah session in the Armory, which is a creative flow session. And Michelle Pappas led us through a creative journaling exercise, and everybody's was different, which was fabulous. And a couple of the ladies stepped up and they just had this revelation that was incredible. The one that's coming to mind right now is Regina had a revelation. Like God spoke to her about shrapnel. Um, Michelle brought shrapnel up. It had to do with the exercise. And then Holy Spirit spoke to Regina and said, it's an invention. Look it up. And she looked it up, and shrapnel was actually invented by somebody with the last name Shrapnel
Wow.
to do more damage in war. And whew, I'm like, whoa. But she knew she could speak up. She
Mhm.
knew she could share
Mhm.
what Holy Spirit had spoken to her, and that she could bring a fresh revelation,
Yeah.
even though she wasn't leading the meeting.
Mhm.
She's not like on the leadership team or something like that that gives her like a boost of authority. She's
Mhm.
a member.
Mm.
She has an equal voice. She knows she has an equal voice. So she does have the authority and confidence to be able to speak because she's been in our space long enough to know that, right? But not because she has a title.
Mm.
But I will tell you that word hit, and we were all like, whoa.
Wow.
And but if she wouldn't have known that she was safe to speak up, we all would have missed that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's not to like toot our horn. I'm just saying like that's evidence. That's an example of what it looks like when somebody knows that they have an equal voice in the community that they're in.
Mhm.
Yeah, and Nanette, I wouldn't even say it as I would never see you posturing of like tooting your
As
own
a horn
horn.
tooter?
Yeah, as a horn tweeter. You're not really a tweeter of the horn. But what I see it as is you are merely a reflection of the healthiness of the community that you're building,
Hmm.
because you are able to see it, acknowledge it, and confidently own the fact that
Oh,
building a
no.
healthy, engaging community is something that you earlier said was one of your superpowers. So it makes sense that an example comes from the Armory, the very place where intuitive daughters can go hang out and explore all of who they are in their different colors, in their different layers, in their various ages and stages of life, right? So yeah, toot toot. I'll do it. I'll do it as someone who's on the other side.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Over here.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I love it. Well, let's shift into engaging in healthy ways in community. And
Yeah.
this is a big conversation also, because I think we've all been in spaces that somebody engages in a way that we're like, not sure about that, or pretty sure no. Right? And this could be online communities or in-person communities. I didn't really say
Yes.
that earlier, but we're talking on in broad terms with all of
Right.
this right now, but to the intuitive daughter of God.
Right. Thoughts that come to my mind about engaging, as you're looking to identify if it's healthy and am I going to come in? I think posture of how you arrive in the community matters. And
Yeah.
it's going to be the key to your success.
Mhm.
Are you coming with an orphan spirit, desperate to be seen, known, understood? Oh, or I need friends. So I'm, if is there a desperation? And you talked about that right earlier, that whole like, I'm going to be overlooked, or they're going to draw me in and I'm going to have to do all the work in the background, right? There's a balance there.
Yeah.
And as you are entering in, there's this posture that has to come over us of realizing we are queens, confident, ruling and reigning in our lives with the Trinitarian nature of God, co-creating everywhere that we go. Like, you can breathe that in as truth, even if all the areas of your life do not look like that based on how you perceive it.
Right.
When we enter into community, it's got to be that we have an understanding of who we are, so that when we arrive, that's what the posture looks like.
Exactly, which is really to the point that you were talking about earlier, that when we're working on ourselves and we're aware of how we're engaging in a space, then we can also really connect with maybe what our role is in that space, what our time is in that space, how to respond if we end up in a space that we're like, I'm not sure this is a super healthy community.
Mhm,
Right. So
mhm.
what's my time? What's my time like here? What's my role like here? So we can ask those questions, but it's hard to ask those questions if we are not in a healthy place in our
Mhm.
own heart and mind. Right.
Right. Yeah. I think there is a pause that takes place where, you talk a lot in IDG. I'll say that instead of continuing to say intuitive daughters of God. IDG
Yeah.
of co-laboring and co-creating alongside the Father. In every single community that you're a part of, you get to check in with Dad on what is my role here.
Yes.
And knowing that, because of the beautiful skill, once fully embraced, of an IDG, is that she is free flowing everywhere she goes. She
Mhm.
can ask, what am I giving? What am I receiving? And again, not from a place of, Lord, give me all the details before in advance so that I know what's going on, because, none of that, but just really saying, is this a community that I'm coming to receive from? Or am I today, when we're having this meeting, do I get to sit in the seat of the giver and flow? Because all of that matters. The posture that you take as you come in, and you will, that health piece that you talked about, you will know if there's an area of your heart that still needs healing, that needs to be looked at, that needs to be held by the Father,
Mhm.
because you'll get triggered. And every single one of us know what it's like when we are triggered. You know it. You know what the feeling is. It's either, are you angry? Do you escape inside? Do you leave the group forever? Do you stop talking to all the people? Do you come out aggressive? Once you're triggered, it's our responsibility to go take that to, we've got heart healing available through IDG. We phone a friend, right? There's so many options where you can, before you bleed all over your new community, your old community, you can check your heart and embrace the tenderness of what you're experiencing and listen to what it is that's happening inside of you.
Yeah. And I'm hearing you say, there's like an undercurrent of this particular statement. You will get triggered in community.
Yes,
That
yes,
is what will
yes,
happen.
that will happen.
It will happen, and it will happen in healthy communities as well as
Yes.
in healthy communities.
Right.
Part of iron sharpening iron is actually just people getting together and being themselves,
Yes.
you know?
Mhm.
And
Absolutely. And giving permission for everyone to be in process. Going back to the top of what you said, it's like, taking that, let's just say if it's a post, a comment, taking that one comment and it just, you are so checked out that it sucks the life out of you. And next thing you know, you're out of the group over one comment. I mean,
Yeah.
you might, don't do that. Give that person permission to be right where they are. And again, hello, intuitive one. If you see it, you own it, pray into that. You don't have to go out there and fix it. You don't have to go out there and be in control and in charge of it. Thank the Father that He's given you eyes to see the intricate details of all the people around you. And then ask Him to do what it is that He does. He's the one who heals. He's the one who helps the blind see.
Yeah.
It can become a part of your love story. Things that trigger you can become a part of your love story.
Woo!
That's good right there. Type that one out.
That one, yeah, type that one. Somebody type that one out because I can't comment on here. It's so good. And I feel like that's something, Laurie, you have part of you, a big part of your story is that the very things that have really been hard on your heart in the past have become a part of your love story. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. And even when April was talking about it, I kept thinking, being in community, it's like getting married. So, it's like when you get married, it's like stick a big mirror in front of you because you're going to see your
Yes.
heart wounds. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it can be this wonderful thing, but if you don't recognize that, you can think it's the community. So there's two sides to that. But absolutely, it's been the biggest part of my love story and really falling in love with who God is and learning to depend on Him fully. That it's
Mhm.
out of that flow that I can get into community and have a healthy relationship with people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can we just acknowledge this glorious truth that we are a part of the Trinity? Like
Yes.
we are
Say that.
in, He is in us, right?
Mhm.
We are in them, they are in us, Father, Son, Spirit.
Yes.
That Trinitarian God, the Trinitarian God that we love, that we have a personal relationship with, that we have our being intermingled with,
Mm.
immersed in, and He is immersed in us at the same time. It's this amazing mystery. And that truth, I will tell you this, you have everything you need to operate in healthy community because you
Yes.
have a healthy community living in you.
Yes. Yeah.
The Trinity is a healthy community. The Trinity is healthy family.
Mhm.
And so I just feel like there's somebody listening, watching, tuning in with us who has a little doubt if they're able to engage in healthy ways in community fully
Yeah.
because of their past, because of the dysfunction in their family or abuse or just heart wounds.
Mhm.
Can I actually be healthy in community?
Mhm.
And that
Yes.
is your answer. The answer is healthy community is in you.
Mm.
So you can be in healthy in community.
And just the idea of access to that, right? So that's the
Yeah.
simple posture is
Yes.
I have access to it. I'm not creating it, manufacturing it.
Mhm.
When I'm triggered, when I'm whatever, when I hear the idea that's the best idea I've ever heard, I can still press into the access that I have to the Trinitarian nature. And that's where my safety is.
Yeah.
So when I'm not feeling, when my feelings are leading out, and I'm not knocking it as one who operates that way, I can remember that I can draw into the one who says, I will never leave and I will never forsake. I will
Yeah.
never leave and I will never forsake. And
Mm.
identifying that will create for an IDG safety.
Mhm.
Right? If we want to go, there's safety in numbers. Well, okay, 4 of us, right? Here we are. Um, you aren't on an island alone, even when
Yeah.
you're in community. And because safety is so important for an IDG, oftentimes because exactly what Lori was saying, life experiences have taught me X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
I get to arrive on the scene already knowing that where does my help come from? It's coming from the full Trinitarian nature.
Yeah. Yeah. And and I want to hit one nail on the head that we are talking that you're so beautifully talking about, but I want to like drill it down to this one point. When we ask ourselves this question, am I safe here?
Mm-hmm.
Is this a safe space? Is this person safe?
Mm-hmm.
A safe person for me to have in my life? I want to set aside maybe extreme situations. I'm not talking about you're in an abusive relationship, things along those lines. Okay. I'm talking about your feelings are getting hurt because you're bumping into some of those triggers, things like that. And you're like, and your inner guardian's like, whoa, I don't feel safe. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the question pops in your mind, am I safe here? Or when the statement pops in, this is not a safe person, or this is not a safe place. I want to call us higher and start asking different questions and saying different things, right? Because the higher view is I am always safe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I may not always feel safe, but I am always safe because God has me covered under the shelter of his wings.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, sometimes there is a toxic environment or a toxic person, and God will say, at this time, we're going to step out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But trust that he is in you and that he loves you enough to not throw you into an unsafe place that now you have to self-protect.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's the difference is you have a protector. So in growing and maturing and becoming more healthy, we need to speak different things over ourselves. I am
Yeah.
safe. I am safe. I am protected. Right? And
Yeah.
then if we identify something toxic, go to him. Is this somewhere I'm supposed to be and shine a light, or am I supposed to go because it's really not a good place for me to be?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so, or at least at this time, that we have different seasons where God will pull us out and God will bring us in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you for that. All right. So let's move into the last of our points here, which is building healthy community. Building healthy community. Okay. So I'm going to speak from the perspective of somebody who is the visionary leader of a community. Okay. But if you are not somebody if you're somebody who does have that on your heart, this is a great part of the conversation. If you are not somebody who has that heart, on your heart, and you're like, oh, I don't think I need to hear this. I want to tell you that building a healthy community is a co-creating venture.
Mm-hmm.
And that if you are a member of a community, you are building that community. A community cannot be built without every single one of its members, just like a body cannot function without its members, right?
Oh, that's so good. What you're saying. That's so good. It's like snap, snap. You are building community.
Snap.
I mean, that's so good.
Yes. So don't check out. You are a part of it. Okay. A key part of it. What if we had only leaders? Then we don't have a healthy community. Okay. That's all. So,
Yes.
and to that point, healthy leadership, including building a healthy community, starts with a healthy leader.
Mm.
Okay, that is the starting point. Because if you don't have a healthy leader, you cannot have a healthy community, period. Because if the gardener is inadvertently pouring toxins into the soil, it will affect the entire garden.
Mm.
Okay. And so that should be sobering.
Yes.
But here's the good news. The good news is it's not about arriving at a measure of health. It's about growing in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
Are you committed to your own personal heart health, mental health, your whole being health? If you are committed to growing into a more healthy person, you can lead a healthy community,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm.
But if you're not committed to that, if you're overlooking your own need for mental and emotional health, recovery, maybe from some spiritual or theological mindsets that can be toxic,
Yeah.
then it will come out. It will be evident at some point. But as somebody who has been there as I began my journey, if you are, if you're showing up like this and like, okay, teach me, right? Then God's going to be faithful to teach you how to be a healthy leader, how to lead in healthy ways, and how to build healthy community. Okay. It's really about that heart and mind posture, leaning forward. As he likes to say, lean forward, don't pull back, lean forward. If you get it, you get it. Or feelers and like do this. Okay, so I want to suggest that one of the keys to healthy community is to view the community as an organism, not an organization, because that will help it to be ecocentric and not egocentric. Right? We've all been entered into a space where there is one or more leader who really everything literally revolves around that person, right? And so that space feels different than when you show up somewhere where you do have those equal voices, where you
Mhm.
have contributors coming from all of these different spaces, different backgrounds, right? Where there is variety in voices, variety in perspectives, variety in experiences. And while we can't manufacture that, looking for it as we're building community and valuing variety as we're
Mhm.
building community. Yes, we are looking for our core. If you're co-creating with other leaders, you're looking for at the core to have alignment,
Mhm.
right? But we don't all want to be saying exactly the same thing from the exact same perspective, because that's boring and unhealthy.
Who's growing? No one's growing.
No one's growing.
I know that. I know that. I know that. I know that.
Exactly. Well, you're in that echo chamber, right? And that's one of the things that I don't hear Christians talking about this very much. Okay. I hear people that are outside of the Christian faith talking about not being in an echo chamber.
Mm.
Now, there are people outside the Christian faith who are in echo chambers. I'm not saying that there aren't, right? I'm just saying that where I had to go to actually even hear people say, hey, you want to hear different things from different perspectives, was not inside a Christian community. We can sometimes get hyper protective of our communities. And so there is a measure of protectiveness as a visionary leader of a community that we're creating a psychologically safe and healthy space that's moving in a direction that really aligns with our values, aligns with the purpose that God has placed on our heart, and serves the people in that community, right? And so because we have that intentionality and focus, it is important to set certain parameters. It is important to be intentional about who we have come alongside of us. That is absolutely accurate. But on the flip side of that, we can also become overly protective because we're afraid.
Mm.
of losing what we have or of losing ground because here we are building, right? And it hurts sometimes if it feels like we've lost ground or part of our building crumbled down and we're like, no. And so we can get like, oh my gosh, I need to build the walls higher because something got in and like, and then we don't realize that God is actually tearing down what doesn't work to reconstruct something. Or if something gets torn down and it's not of God, right? Sometimes things happen that are painful and that are maybe there was something toxic that kind of worked its way in and it had to come down.
Mm.
Right? But God is rebuilding that. And so when we get hyper protective, then we don't allow for the flow, right? We dam it up instead of building the banks of the river.
That's so powerful. And when just listening to you talk about, damming it up and building the walls higher on an already crumbly foundation, right? And they
Mhm.
just keep coming down and they keep coming down. And, then you're sometimes desperately calling people in to help fix it when the reality is it's the foundation is the problem in the first place. And just hitting reset
Mhm.
to, the foundation that I'm building on.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many times in the last 4 years that I've built in this area, in this space, that I have been called by God to take a big step back
Yeah.
and just to let things settle.
Mm-hmm.
And then he brings the truth and the understanding, the revelation, the direction. But when I'm in there scrambling to like put things
Mm-hmm.
back together, it doesn't work. And
Right.
I only end up with like loss of confidence because here I am watching, because my place of confidence is actually resting in him. And so
Mm-hmm.
when I step outside of that
Mm-hmm.
is when I start feeling insecure,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Well, it's manufactured, therefore you're over there building
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
I go back to the whole analogy from the beginning, which is this idea of a garden. And you as the cultivator of the garden, you know, breathing that in sounds a lot more simple than the other building up walls and brick by brick. And, like, let's go back over into the garden
Mhm.
state, literally
Yeah.
the original design,
Yeah.
and think about what happens in those times
Yeah.
for you when you knew you had to change how you were cultivating. Maybe you're tilling things up, ripping out weeds, all of that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Exactly. And there are always there are boundaries that are needed for every healthy garden because
Mhm.
there are cute little bunnies and deer that will come in and eat your
They do a lot more than eat, but yes, they do. They're gonna come take it out.
Mhm.
And
Oh,
boundaries isn't a scary word, okay, people? I just want to say, I want to remind us of that.
mm,
Boundaries isn't some big, I'm gonna tell everybody in the world how to treat me. It is a it is a tender, loving concept that you can have, and it is necessary. And I have watched you exhibit that time and again in building healthy community.
Mhm.
Loving boundaries. This is how we operate in this space. This is what it looks like
Mhm.
when you are not hyper protective, but appropriately protecting the growth, um, of you called it an ecosystem versus ego, right?
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, ecocentric versus egocentric.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and ego doesn't always mean gosh, it doesn't know. Lori, I feel like you and I need to have a little like quick powwow on this because we've been talking a little bit about ego, haven't we?
Mhm.
Um, so ego isn't in and of itself an evil thing either. So if you think about your like most basic needs and meeting those needs, that's your ego. But again, in coming higher and in keeping your ego in the appropriate place. So that comes back to that protection, right? So are we wired to self-protect? Well, we're wired to keep ourselves alive, right? Those instincts are in us. That's part of that ego is I got to keep myself alive, right? But as we mature and as we learn to trust and we learn to depend on God who loves us, our good Father who loves us and who is our protector, then we can begin to release that protectiveness to him and to trust him with that. And so that is what I mean there. Did you want to add to that at all, Laurie?
I think you said that beautifully. I want to say though, when April was talking about boundaries, I think of it as grace, like operating in grace for yourself and for others, and it goes both ways. So when you make those boundaries, it's not just loving you, you are actually loving that other person by
Yeah.
giving them boundaries as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a wonderful thing.
Man, that's so good. And I just heard tough love, and I feel like you're redefining tough love
Mm.
by talking about grace and boundaries in this way. And man, sometimes people are just in such a habit of plowing over boundaries that they actually need a little bit of like, hey, we're not going to go there, you know?
Right.
Yeah. So good. I love this conversation. Okay, so again, a reminder that we are going to actually, if you can believe it, we're going to dig deeper into all of these spaces.
Yes.
So, once a month over the next 3 months, we are going to go deeper into healthy community and having actual trainings on this. So I'm really excited. I'm so thankful to you, Laurie and April, for joining me in this. Thankful to Holy Spirit for dropping in my spirit that this was the right time to start digging deeper into healthy community and bringing this conversation into this space. I would love to know from those who are tuning in with us today, what has stood out to you from this conversation? What's a takeaway? What's a highlight for you that you're going to be able to take with you and to use to help you adjust or filter or engage in a more healthy way? Okay, I also want to let everybody know that we have a special going on for the Armory membership, which is our leadership development space in Intuitive Daughters of God. So it is holistic development of intuitive leaders, messengers, and creators. So if that is you, I would be happy to have a conversation to see if it's a good fit for you. So just DM me. You can, we are waiving the $100 enrollment fee for the month of February. Okay. So just for the next, what is that? Less than a week. I think it's like 5 days. Okay. So reach out to me right away and we can have a conversation and see if this is the healthy community for you. And it has been created specifically for intuitive daughters of God. So you go to intuitivedaughtersofgod.com/armory, and that is going to give you information on like what the armory is. Okay. And then there's an opportunity to connect with me in that space as well. Thank you again, ladies. I love you so much. And I can't wait for the rest of this conversation.
Thank you, Nanette. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Love you, ladies. Yay.
Love you.
Bye.